here we are. Welcome to another edition of the Foursquare Show. I am Eric. As always, we have Dan, and as you can see, we have a new member of our show here for today, a guest member, our first guest member. So thank you, Judy, for being our first guest member. Judy, actually, I'm going to let you go ahead and maybe give just a little introduction as to who you are, where you're from, how you're affiliated with Foursquare.
Yeah, so I'm Judy. I live in the Mid-Coast in Maine, and basically I work as a social emotional educator. And in the winter term, I was placed in Whitefield Elementary last year. And when I came in, the first thing they said, we need help with Foursquare. Can you help with our um, behaviors there? And so I got really into Foursquare. I remembered immediately when they said that um, back in my elementary school days. Foursquare was everything. And I just did some more research on Foursquare and found the World Championship and took a team there based on both their skill and their sportsmanship abilities because Foursquare is a very emotional time at this age.
Thank you. A couple of things resonated with me, which is it is still a life goal of mine to have like anybody ever come to me and say, I need your help with Foursquare. So tip of the hat to you for that. Um, and yeah, I mean, it is an emotional and social. I mean, Dan and I have covered a lot of these, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so. But there are just so many components to Foursquare. And sports and activities and a lot of things in general. But Foursquare just has a different component because of the nature of the way that it is played. There's just so much socialism involved with it. What have you seen, Judy, just from like your interaction with the kids and like how that plays into the game?
It's a huge part in the game. Mostly self management is something that I notice kids struggle with. Just acting out when they think they're being cheated or being targeted. Um, and oftentimes just giving them the power to um, know how to hit the ball or something will help them be able to manage those emotions better. But getting out, no matter what, is hard. And it's figuring
Yeah.
out how to deal with those emotions and then continue playing or removing yourself from the game. When I first
Yeah.
came, there was so much immediate removal. Like whether it was a teacher removing you because you have done a behavior that is not okay, or you removing yourself because you're getting way too heated and recess isn't fun.
Yeah.
That's not the point. Recess should be fun. So
Yeah.
working on those behaviors.
Yeah. There's so much like competitive, being fair, all the things that come along with being a good, not necessarily good in the sense of like you're really good at the game, but good in terms of being a good competitor. Um, that's something that I remember back to when I was a kid playing Foursquare, and there was always those kids who, and this was outside of like a school structure. This was just more in like a summer parks program. And there was always those kids who, no matter what, every single time would put up a fight to, I wasn't out, that didn't hit the line, or oh, I wasn't ready, or oh, this, that, and the other thing. So um, yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned as to, how to be again a good competitor. Dan, we talked a little bit about this as well in some of our previous stuff. Any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, I was going to say there's a couple that came to mind for me. One was, and I'm thinking back 20 years to the last time I played regularly. Judy, most of my experience is at a summer camp, so I'd play for 2 weeks at a time and then take the rest of the year off. Or when I became a counselor, 6 weeks at a time and then take the rest of the year off. So very, very concentrated experiences for me. Thinking back to that, certainly it was fairly easy to identify kids who weren't in the spirit of the game and just again a lot of those same behaviors, sort of trying too hard to win and kind of trying to hone in on what is the appropriate level of competitiveness, friendship, team building, ganging up. But one that stuck out for me and that I experienced was it gave me the confidence to stand up to those people and say, "Hey, wait, no, this is fairly obvious. We're getting a group together to, impart a point of view and sort of impose that fairness and that rule following on people." Another one for me was I was not all that good at sports as a kid. My brother was the athletic one. I was sort of the smarter one. And as I got better at Foursquare, it gave me a certain level of confidence to say, look, I am pretty good at this. This is, it's kind of building me up and giving me confidence in something that I hadn't expected. So certainly any number of developmental skills and sort of world building and person building that can go on within a Foursquare court.
Yeah, self-confidence, absolutely. I love what you said about that, Dan. And you mentioned that you weren't necessarily the athletic or sporty one, but I beg to differ because again, in my opinion, Foursquare is absolutely a sport. It's many other things as we're talking through here today, and we have, but yeah, I love that. And I don't know if I've mentioned this actually in these shows yet, but I actually did a Foursquare camp for kids this past summer. It was a week. We met for about 3 hours at a local, Foursquare court, which and it was fantastic. I mean, just having, the camaraderie again, the kid, like, it was similar to a camp or a school, but, we just came during the summer to play Foursquare. I mean, every now and then we took a little break and did wiffle ball or kickball just to kind of break it up a little bit. But yeah, I'm seeing, even just in a week, having the kids be, I mean, most of them came into the camp not really knowing each other. By the end, and again, we're just talking about 4 or 5 days, they were, having fun with each other, chatting, being friendly. Hey, I'll see you at school. So that definitely goes a long way. So I mean, a lot of what Dan and I discuss is sometimes related more towards like the more competitive side of Foursquare when we're kind of maybe focusing in on like the World Championships. So, we do always want to strike that balance of that versus the fun and camaraderie and all the things, Judy, that you had mentioned that come along with Foursquare. So, that being said, there are a couple of updates that I'd like to kind of talk through. So we are filming, we're recording here on February 12th. I think it was just earlier today or maybe yesterday that Peter, who runs the World Championships, sent out a welcome email. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah,
I've
the
seen that
20th
yet. I'll have to take a look.
anniversary.
Yeah, the 20th anniversary
There
is
it
this
is.
year. Yeah, Dan, I think there's an email distribution list which I think Peter, holds. So if for some reason you didn't get it, reach out to me or him or whatever. We want to make sure you're on that. But
I
yeah,
got it at 7:44 this morning.
beautiful. All right.
Yep.
So some of you who are listening may have received it as well. If you'd like to be part of this distribution list, please feel free to reach out. So yeah, I was in touch with Peter last week, and the registration is in the process of being built, which is the how you can sign up, to be part of the World Championships. Yes, Judy, as you mentioned, it is the 20th anniversary this year, which is exciting. There was a little bit of talk about possibly moving the venue to the high school, but it sounds like we are going to stick with the town hall this year, unless we get some big, huge influx of, registers signing up for the event, and then we'll pivot as needed. So yeah, we are just about 2 months away. It's April 12th, actually literally 2 months away today. So it's going to be here before we know it, which is kind of weird because again, at least in Judy and I's neck of the woods, Judy's in Maine, I'm in Massachusetts. It is so extremely bitterly cold and snowy, and you don't really think about Foursquare when that's going on.
I don't know.
Um,
We're still playing. We're shuffling the snow off the court with our boots at recess still. So
I love that. I love that. So actually, tell us a little bit more about like just like the day and day. Like, do they play Foursquare every day at recess? Is like how
yes.
competitive does it get? Do you do tournaments? Is it just for fun? Give us a little insight on that.
Okay. So recess is just for fun. We have two courts at recess, and we do it based on the World Championship rules. And we talk through a lot of things during recess about why something might be out and how we can be better. And then there will be practices after school, do like little skill workshops. And so last year we did spins, serves, spikes. We did like a little workshop for each one after school. And that was more competitive. And then we had just some competitive games after school. But at recess, it is mostly just fun playing. If you want advice, come to me. We'll talk through it. And then we get closer to the championship. I will give them all like written feedback and be like, this is what I need to see from you if you want to come to the championship. And that's usually mostly around sportsmanship, but sometimes it's just some little hints too that might help out their play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, forgive me, Judy. I don't recall. Were you at the World Championships last year?
Yes.
Okay.
I was going to ask the same thing, Eric, so don't feel
Okay.
So we must have
Um,
met there.
We were
Apologies for
there. We
not
were
remembering.
okay.
matching. We had like white jerseys with stars on them.
Okay. Okay. And were you a participant as well, or were you
I
there more
did
for
not
the?
participate. No,
Okay.
I was
Okay.
managing kids.
Gotcha. Yep. No,
Yeah.
I brought my son last year, and part of me was kind of like, at the time he was 8, now he's 9, and I was like, am I going to be able to really like focus and pay attention to me playing, or am I going to be in dad mode? So luckily
Yeah.
he was good, but um,
I was in coach mode.
you were in coach mode. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So this upcoming year, are you thinking of the kind of the same thing? And how
Yeah.
many kids are you thinking that you'll be bringing?
Um, Probably it's gonna depend on chaperones.
Yep,
Hopefully around 20. If we can get more chaperones, we'll bring some more. But
yep,
it's
yep.
always a bit of a struggle with that late night time frame with little kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Hard to get
I
some
know.
chaperones for that.
Yeah, and I wonder too, I don't know if this year I don't know if it's too late now, but that's a possibility that we can kind of consider as maybe moving the time a little bit earlier so that um, that's not as much of a constraint there. Yeah, because it usually gets over what, like around 8 o'clock, but then you
Yeah.
got to travel and
And
whatnot.
then we're
So
like 2.5 hours away.
okay,
Then you have
So you guys are coming from a couple of
sleepy
hours away.
8-year-olds. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, okay. No, that's a good thing for us to maybe take back then. Um, How do you determine which kids get to go? Do you have a tournament in order to get to the championship, or how,
We
how
do
is
not
that?
have a tournament. Okay.
Okay.
This is how I did it last year. And it'll probably be a very similar process this year. Is I gave everyone in the school grades through 3 through 8 um, quizzes on Foursquare, and if they wanted to participate, they needed to turn it in to me. And the questions were like, what happens if the ball hits the outside line? What do you do when you get out? What do you say to someone if they get out? Um, and just like checking sportsmanship, but also rules.
Yep.
And then after I had those names, then at recess I watched them play, and it mostly was looking for sportsmanship because that was a big thing we were working on and being kind to one another.
Hmm.
So I was looking at that, but then also skill level and how often are you playing at recess? Like, is this something you're actually very interested in, or are you just showing up once in a while when you
Yeah.
think maybe I'm making a decision? Um,
Yeah.
so mostly sportsmanship, but then on that skill level too.
I love that. Um, I'm pretty sure I remember because you mentioned we had the same
Yeah, we all had the same
jersey or
shirt.
uniform. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember you all kind of trotting in. Um, it was awesome. So I say that because I think I remember, who the kids were that came from, your school and whatnot. And I gotta say, they were extremely appreciative. Um, you know, um, great competitors, great sportsmanships and things. So for what that's worth, great job in
Oh, I've done that as well.
yeah, in instilling that in them. I mean, that always obviously makes it a lot more, fun because again, it's not just about winning. Again, the World Championships that is a little bit of a part of it there, but it's about building some friendships and having a good time and meeting other people that have this kind of quirky hobby that we have that again I know Dan has mentioned, we didn't realize there were other people out there like us. So
Yeah, we
um
have some of our eighth graders who are in high school now coming back this year to help with the younger kids. It's
oh
really
great.
awesome. Like Foursquare's all around, but it does seem sometimes it seems like it's just a school thing. So many
Mm-hmm.
people are interested in it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you, Judy, at recess, how many kids are playing on the two courts?
Okay, well, we are not a big school. We probably at recess in total, we have maybe 30 to 40 kids that go to recess.
That are
And
out there
then
at one time?
we're probably having around 10 to 11 playing Foursquare. So it's like a good chunk. Right now, the sledding is great, so numbers are down a little bit. And there's ice on the court, so not as interesting. But when the courts are clear and ice free, it's most of them.
I laugh because we're missing two of the essential elements for sledding down here, which are snow and hills. So I completely forgot that was even a possibility.
Yeah, the snow courts have been going pretty well. So sometimes when you have to decide 30 minutes, do I snowboard or do I Foursquare? It's a tough one.
Yeah.
And especially
Well,
because if you don't do the snow, it might be gone later. The
yeah.
court will be there one way or another. Yeah,
Also, if
Yeah.
absolutely.
the ball gets all snowy and Foursquare doesn't bounce so well, so then it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
all
there is an
things
off
considered.
season. There is an off season for Foursquare.
Yeah.
Well, this is great. I do want to dive in a little bit to where we left things last time we met. Let me actually just bring that up. So, um, the last time we had our meeting here, we talked a little bit about the possibility of revising some of the rules within the World Championships. And actually, Judy, myself, Dan, we had some email conversations, and I brought in Mark as well, who is our reigning champion, multiple time champions. I obviously respect the hell out of him, so wanted to get his opinion on the matter as well. So we basically decided that we are going to keep it basically the way that it is, which is keeping the numbers or the squares in the order that they have been in within the World Championship, which is I think the way Judy you mentioned you guys do it as well. So 4 is going to be diagonal with 2, and 3 is diagonal with 1. The person in 4 would always be serving to the person in 1 who's entering the square. So there was a myriad of, and is that correct, Judy? Is that what we
We
discussed?
have 4 diagonal from 1, so that way the person entering is always the one being served to.
So I may have not have said that correctly, but that's exactly what I'm trying to I'm
Okay, so
trying
you
to say. Yes.
enter in 1, which is diagonal from 4, and then
Yes.
you move to 2, which is adjacent to 1 and 4, and then you move diagonally for 3.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So 4 and
that's
1 are diagonal from each other.
Yeah.
The 1 is where someone enters the square. And then 2 and 3 would be diagonal from each other as well because of, right?
Yes.
Am I saying that right?
That
Okay.
is how we have it.
Cool. Okay. So we
Might be a
will.
visual moment.
Yeah.
At the end there.
So that's going to stay the same again, and then the person who's serving in 4 will continue to serve it to 1 diagonal. We went through email like reasons why, and I don't know if we need to really discuss like I don't know, Dan or Judy, do you have like a kind of a summary reason why we wanted to keep it that way?
I was gonna hit on one that really resonated
Yeah.
with me. Kind of going back to what I said earlier, which is when you come in, you don't just want someone else to get the ball and then you get spiked and you're out and you're at the back of the line. So that
Yeah.
chance to actually play the ball every time you get in I think is especially helpful.
Yeah.
And I would say especially for kids, they don't just get frustrated and discouraged.
Right.
It's everybody actually gets a chance to participate.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too.
Yeah, perfect. Now, open question, and I'd love for us just to make the decision right here, right now. When it comes to the weeding out of the players as we're in the World Championships, eventually, obviously, it ends up getting down to 4, it gets down to 3, and then it gets down to the final 2. This came up last year and it honestly wasn't even thought of ahead of time, so we just kind of winged it, as we do sometimes with Foursquare. But let's get ahead of it this time. Should the final 2 be competing against each other diagonally or should they compete? What's the word? Dan, help me
Face
out.
on.
There it is.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
So it's funny because everything that we've done up to this point, I feel like my logic should go to maintain it diagonally. The serves are going diagonally the whole time. Why should we switch? But my aesthetic sense, or just kind of what I want or what I expect or what I would kind of look for, would be to put them kind of square on, face on. And I can't exactly articulate why, other than when you have 2 people, they're kind of facing each other straight. It seems to be a little more natural, but I don't have a whole lot of reasoning behind that, especially because it would kind of change the way everything works just for that final round. So I'd like to see it face on. It just seems to be, if I was in that, it would seem kind of more squared up, more direct and head on. But it would certainly be a change from the way the game had been running up to that point.
I was initially thinking diagonal just because that's how the serves would normally go, but also it seems like there's more skill that involved because you have the corners at either end in that diagonal shape, so it's less of an up close game and more of a can I cover my whole square.
That's true.
That's what I
was. Another thought is, technically square 4 and square 3, which would be where those 2 competitors would be in this situation, are next to each other versus diagonal. So in a way, it's almost like, oh, the person in 3 is just moving to 1 for these final 2, for this finale, which if that's the case, so be it. But that's just another thing that I thought of, which is, I'm not sure.
Maintain their natural progressions and positions.
Yeah. So, and it's also difficult for me, and I know Dan, again, we've talked about this, because I always default to the way that I had always played my whole life, which in this case,
we never got to that point. It was always 4, and then the game was stopped, so it never came up.
So for us, we did do this type of situation where we would have outs and people would, be eliminated, and we'd end up getting down to 3 and 2 and whatnot. And we always did it the one-on-one that, Dan, I think you were referencing. But again, that was also somewhat because of the fact that the squares were also positioned differently than how they are in the World Championships. So again, it's not really maybe comparing apples to apples here.
So we ended up doing a lot of sort of squared on, I want to call it across the straight as opposed to the diagonal, because we would do square offs. Basically, if there was an argument about where the ball landed, is one person out or is another, you 2 guys go together, just the 2 of you in this one-on-one, and more often than not, they were straight at each other as opposed to diagonal.
But if that was the case,
we would have occasional ones that were diagonal.
Oh, they were, okay. So in other words, if they happen to be that way,
1 or 2 and 3, I think we would do the diagonal. And it was just kind of like, well, this is weird. Something about the square or the court not being a rectangle anymore.
Right. It does change the angles. Yeah. Sorry.
When people play 2 square, they'd be right next to each other also.
Yeah.
That's a good point, because I play with my son, just him and I, and we're playing next to each other. We're not going diagonal. Maybe that's the smoking gun. Maybe we should.
The game changes
um
when there's only two people.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Are we good with that? I mean, does anyone feel strongly that no, they should be diagonal, or are we okay making that change? And I'll filter it out to Peter, and we'll have an official rule change.
The only other two points I would bring up were, do we want to let the competitors decide? And if they have different opinions, we default to, can the two competitors both say, yes, we prefer to go diagonally? And then the other one would be, how do we deal with three competitors? Because I'm assuming square one would be empty. So who gets served to at that point?
Yes. So last year we had obviously for the server, and then we had, I know Judy mentioned she may have to go, so that's fine, Judy.
Yeah.
We had for the server, we had one, the diagonal, because that's where you need to serve. And then I think, I don't even, was it three? I think it was,
I would think it would be three because you'd be in
yeah,
that
it'd be
higher
4-3-2,
square after having
exactly.
advanced.
Yeah. So it's technically square two
That's
was empty. So that's a little bit weird, I guess, just because you would think, okay, well, it'd be 4-3-2, but if you need to serve diagonal still because you still have more than two people, I mean, I don't know. I think that makes sense, right? To keep it that way, where when it's three left, it would be 4-1-3.
Yeah.
And two would be empty. So if you hit it into two, that's like hitting it
That's
out.
out.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we made a decision here today. I love it.
I'm liking
All right.
this. Switch it up, and put the two guys head on and have them bump fists.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And then I didn't cover this at all. Do we have about how long? It's about 12:30 my time. Do we have another 15 minutes, or how long do you guys have?
I do, Judy. I don't know.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I
all
just have to, if any students come and
Yeah.
talk, I'm just going to turn off
Okay.
the camera. But
Great. The next thing I'd like to ask and talk about, by the way, I'm bouncing around like our normal agenda, Dan. With a couple months left of the championships, I'm starting to prioritize, but I definitely want to,
Absolutely.
come. Yeah, we can. We'll have the whole rest of the year to talk about like the width of lines. That's a thing. Okay.
it is.
Oh my goodness, I love the fact that we found each other. Okay. So, um, does the ball need to bounce in the square in order for it for you to hit it? And let me give a little context to that, and I'd love to hear what you guys think. So I grew up which again doesn't make it right or wrong, but I grew up in the way that the ball absolutely has to bounce in your square in order for you to hit it. In the World Championships, other than the serve, any player is able to hit the ball before it bounces, even if it's not like going to bounce in your square. You can you can intercept it. You can as long as it's a legal hit, you're not catching it, holding it, carrying it. You're not interfering with another player. You can. Some people call this blackjack, or you can hit the ball in the air before it bounces into anyone else's square. And um, I didn't really see it utilized a whole heck of a lot last year, but I do know from just some of the stuff I've looked into, there are some competitors that absolutely utilize that strategy, and so be it. I mean, if you can use it, then do it. But I believe there was a little bit of confusion last year, maybe in the kids division, as to whether or not that you could do that. And that's probably like on the people running it, myself included, to not make sure that was known. So I wanted to set all that up. What are you guys' thoughts in terms of that being part of the game? Judy, I'd like to hear maybe what you guys do right now.
I think Judy's got the more relevant opinion here.
It has to bounce in your square. When it bounces in your square, that is what initiates your turn. That's how you know you can go. And I know there was a lot of confusion in the kids division because on the website it did have that it had to bounce, and so we've been playing that way. And then we got there and they said, "Oh, you can hit in the air." Because we're like, "Wait, what do you mean?" And I was like, "You don't have to hit it in the air. Let it bounce. just keep
Yeah.
playing how we've been playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that is how you know it's your turn, and also helps a lot, especially with the younger kids, with when taking turns is still something we're learning about and still something we're
Yeah.
kind of struggling with. Once it bounces in your square, that's good. Now it's your
Yeah.
turn and only your turn. Nobody else can hit it.
Yeah.
It's in your
Yeah.
space.
Well, Dan, I want to definitely hear what you have to say and think about that, but I'll chime in real quick. To be candid, I despise that rule in terms of not having it bounce in your square. Again, a little bit probably is because of just that's the way I grew up, the way I knew the game. But even like, oh, okay, let me think of it objectively, like, and setting that aside, like, does that make sense in this sport, in this game? And, though I can see an argument as to why it might, I don't know. To me, it just, I think of ping pong or tennis. And in those games, you can do that, right? So Foursquare is very similar to those games. It's not the same game, but it's similar. So that's an argument as to maybe why you would be able to do that. But still, for me, and to Judy, your point, I feel like it just makes sense that, okay, it bounces in your square. It is now yours to be hit and nobody else's.
Yeah. I do wonder what you're saying. It's like ping pong and tennis. There is, though, the net, and you can't reach over the net, versus
Hmm.
when we're playing in a square, how do you then regulate if it's not going to come in your square, but you still hit it if you reach into someone's square space because there is no physical reminder of where that space ends? Because that's where
Yeah,
we have a lot of trouble of
yeah,
we're already working on that spatial awareness and not going in someone else's square. And now if I can hit it in the air, does that mean I can encroach on their space?
And
I can see.
so
Yeah.
there's a particular issue if the ball is moving kind of along one of the lines. I got to look at my referencing. Is it threes or is it fours? Like, where is it going to bounce? And you kind of got to position yourself so they're both going for it and they both have a legitimate claim to it.
Hmm.
That makes it interesting. I was going to say something else about we always played like super cutthroat foursquare, like people just wailed at each other, and like it was no holds barred. So there was certainly a lot of two people going for it. There's still questions of interference. Are you interfering with someone? Do you both have a legitimate claim to the ball? If so, what do you do in that case? Because you got two people kind of hitting it at the same time, and it just drops dead when you hit it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to resolve those. I see it similarly to Eric from the objective sense. You have the option to let it bounce in your square. I've always seen that as extra time, extra cushion, a way to slow it down. But if you're able to speed it up, it's not required. There's certainly a lot of questions around making sure someone who has a chance at the ball is able to get to it. Are you kind of, jumping in and poaching it from somebody and poking it behind their back? Is that allowed? Is that, kind of the differences between, I was thinking of Little League Baseball versus the major leagues, it does get more competitive as the divisions go up. Um, I don't know if I had a particular point that I was going to there other than I like being
Yeah.
able to do it.
Yeah.
And I
No, I
think
mean,
I think it more blends into interference and what happens when there's ambiguous
mhm.
balls.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're just spitballing here. We're just thinking through it. And, I mean, it sounds like for the most part, we're all, essentially on the same page where probably for a myriad of reasons that we've been talking through, it there's a lot of subjectivity. There's gray area that can get involved in Foursquares in general.
Yeah.
But when this particular rule or strategy is in place, it can maximize some of that confusion. Especially again at a child's division level. Hypothetically, if somebody hit, and probably more from an adult standpoint, but if somebody hit the ball kind of high up in the air with like a big vault lob, anybody could go and chase that down and hit it. And what if they get, if they step in the way of somebody else where you can tell it's going to land in three, but hey, I'm going to go and hit. I mean, I just feel like there's a lot, and that doesn't necessarily really happen. I haven't seen it happen, but technically it could. Um, so I don't know. I think I'll go on record. My vote will be to remove that um, altogether from the World Championships, with the disclaimer that if anybody here is listening outside of the three of us and feels strongly about it, we are absolutely open to hearing you out. And, because I believe this has been part of the way that this has been played for for a very long time. So, we don't want to step in and make something not right. So, but that would be my vote. What are you Judy, Dan? Do we have an official vote? Are we going to make a second rule change today? It'll be a record.
I have a clarifying question. You're saying that the ball must bounce in the square before it is played?
Yes.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I think I'm going to go the other way, but I think either way we do it, each one introduces a different problem. Yeah, it's for Eric's scenario, it's okay. We're waiting, we're waiting to see who gets to hit the ball, and all of a sudden that ball, bounces, comes back up, and it's just an easy, it's an easy slam or something. And mine introduces the both people going for it and hitting it right at the same
Right.
time. So I
So
think it's just a question, which one do we want to do?
Yeah.
I like playing it where you can hit it in the air. It's faster paced and I think more professional adults, higher skill. And that also introduces the question of should there be differences between the kids division and the adult division?
Yeah.
So maybe we think about leaving that component in for the men's and women's, but removing it from the boys and girls children's division. That's always an option as well.
I definitely think I don't forget which one is leaving and which one is changing, but I definitely think making sure the ball bounces in the children's division is the way to go. For the adults, I could see having that faster pace.
I would agree with that. I think,
especially
the children's is until 13. They're still developmentally still getting that spatial awareness versus adults being able to move around makes more sense.
Yeah, I like that.
Spatially, the squares are very important there, and knowing it's your space.
And so by the way, I think we just made yet another decision, which I love. So for men and women's divisions, which is age, I think it's 14 and up. So just men and women, is in Foursquare, at least in the World Championship, we're talking about 14 and up. We will keep it as is, which means that it does not need to bounce in your square other than the serve to hit it. From the children's side of things, 13 and below, it does, which again, for all the reasons we've discussed, I think makes a lot of sense. That being said, let's talk a little bit about spatial and interference and when the ball hits your square, when you can hit it, when you should get out of the way. So the way that I believe it's currently set up in the rules now in the World Championships, which I do agree with for what it's worth, is once the ball bounces, we'll leave aside a little bit of if it doesn't bounce, let's just make the assumption the ball bounces in your square. Once the ball bounces in your square, you are the only one who is now able and eligible and needs to hit the ball into another square. There are, of course, and again, this may happen more in the adult side, but it happens in the kids too, where the ball will say, go into a corner of a square and then travel in the air into another square's space, right? At that point, the player who is now needing to hit the ball might need to run or travel or walk fast or move over or whatever to hit the ball, and he may be impeding in on the another person's square. The way that I believe we have it set up is that person who's in the way, they didn't do anything wrong, but you're playing the game and you need to be aware of what's going on. So if someone is coming at you to hit the ball that they need to hit, you need to kind of get out of the way. You can't on purpose impede their body from getting to the ball. If you do, that would be interference. And I don't recall if we would have that person be out or if we would do a do-over. I feel like it would be a do-over.
I think it sort of depends on the intent.
It might, yeah, it might be
if you get people that are
situational.
just like, they're both in the same space because they both kind of have a clear. One's preparing to defend while the other one is lunging in to actually, finish their turns. Nobody's. But if someone just straight up, no, I'm going to prevent you from getting to the ball, I think that's pretty clearly an out.
It does say in the rules that you, like, your square is yours, and then there's the 5 feet outside of the square that is yours, like on the outside line. And we really emphasize, because we are still working on spatial awareness, if your feet can't go in someone else's square. So it's like, if you need to hit that and it's on the corner, you have to figure out how to get your arm over there so you're not running into someone. Do they still run into each other sometimes? Yes, but it's on both parties to make sure no one gets hurt.
Yeah, and I think from like a learning the game, a fun standpoint, educational, that makes sense. I definitely don't think that that should be the case like in the World Championships, because I do think it's okay to go into somebody else's square as long as you're going after the ball that is yours and there's no, intentional collisions or interference or any of that stuff.
So, I have a follow-up question. If in the adult division, it doesn't have to bounce in your hair to hit it, bounce in your square to hit it, what's keeping you in your square? Anything? Or is that just where you're starting?
It's just a strategy.
Yeah,
that's if you find yourself better off, again, without interfering with someone, you don't necessarily have to stay in your square or in the 5 feet around it. I would say I like the idea of, your toe slipped over the line into my square. I don't think that should be an automatic out in either division. It's a guideline. It's a, hey, look, if you've got both feet in and you're staying in for a couple of seconds, there's probably something wrong. But one step in to reach something is in both divisions. I think it's not a bright line. You're out. That's it. No exceptions.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I think the thing that happens now more commonly is same scenario, the ball bounces into your square and you're going after it, but because the ball is traveling in this example away from you into somebody else's space, into somebody else's area, into somebody else's square, that person goes and hits it when the other person was going to try to hit it, right? I think that happens quite often, right?
Yeah.
So in that situation, again, please correct me if I'm wrong or with what your understanding is, but, and I believe this is the way it's in the rules. If the person who it bounced in their square, and so therefore they are the ones who needs to hit. They're responsible to what did we say last time? Divert you're constantly what did we say?
Diverting the path or whatever it was. I mean, I would say the ball bounced in my square. I'm responsible for hitting
You're responsible for it, yes. If that person has a realistic chance of getting it and is going after it, and the player and another player hits it, that would be, is that called poaching or interference? I think there's a few different types of words.
We always called it saving. It's the idea that if the ball bounces twice without anybody hitting it, someone is out. We can figure out who that would be. So the ball bouncing twice means that someone is out. And that second player, the second square who it's going in, if they hit it, that ball hasn't bounced twice. They saved the person whose square it's in. They diverted the path and redirected the ball for that original person. And it's if it's coming to them and they want to keep play going, great. Or they can just sort of sit back and say, not my ball, not my problem. I'm going to stay out of your way and make you hit it. And that first person's got to come in and get the ball wherever they were originally responsible for it. Yeah, it's the idea that a ball bounces in Eric's square, it's coming towards me, I can hit it to get him out. I mean, that doesn't work for me. Yeah. And then because you have two players going for it, trying to achieve opposite goals, and that creates a conflict.
See, the way I look at it is if the ball bounces in your square, it's yours and only yours.
I would say it's yours, but someone else could keep it going.
So the way that
because you'll see people just kind of stand back and be like,
right,
I'm not touching it.
But in your theory here, they could, and it's okay to.
Yeah.
The way that we have the rules now, it's not okay to. If you were to hit in that scenario, if you're hitting somebody else's square and they were going after it, but you hit it, you would be out because you purposely hit somebody else's. Now, the only time that person wouldn't be out is if the person, it's hit into somebody's square and that person just stood there, didn't make an attempt, didn't even try to go after it. It was that person clearly wasn't going to try to hit the ball, and then somebody else either catches it or hits it. They would make the argument, well, that person was not going to get. I mean, that's where we get a little subjective. So maybe that's something we think about, but that's the way I think it currently is.
And that's where the 2 bounce rule comes in. It's, I'm not going to make an attempt. I'm going to wait for this other person to save me. And it's on the second square that it's going in to save if they want to, or just let bounce a second time. But it keeps the idea that the ball bounced in your square. It's your responsibility. And there are times when it's natural for that second person, like they're in position, they're gonna keep it going, they've got a great shot. It's almost harder for them to get out of the way, that they'll keep it going. But it's not their responsibility. It's, again, they've got the option. They can't catch it because well, what if the person's coming towards it? But I think it prevents that conflict of 2 players going towards the ball at the same time, also without having to judge, well, the first person who did bounce it, were they making an attempt? Were they making a half-hearted attempt? I mean, who's to judge there?
Right.
Yeah,
Judy, what are your thoughts?
I have to agree with what Dan just said. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay, good stuff. It's we could go on and on with with these scenarios and examples, but I think we've made a couple of changes here today, which is awesome. I think we should probably wrap things up because we're coming up here on an hour. But Judy, we would love to have you back again, and as part of this, or as frequently as you want. You kind of have an open invite. And we have a couple of months away, so we'll probably have another show or two, hopefully before the World Championships. Maybe we'll look for like the beginning of March or something, so we'll figure something out and we'll pick things up from here. We'll just continue to talk through stuff and prioritize as needed, but we made a couple of rule changes here today, so look at that. We're doing
it's good
stuff.
to come to some consensus, at least among the 3 of us. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks, Judy. Yeah, and thanks for everything that you're doing with the kids and just Foursquares in general. Like I said, having someone just come to you and say, "Help us with Foursquare." That's.
I know. I came in and I was like,
"Yeah,
I'm in. Foursquare, I'm there."
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Appreciate it, and we'll meet again soon.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one.
Bye.